Welcome to Wrestling with History. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe as we continue to bring you the best stories in the history of wrestling. Steve Austin was a great talent throughout the early 90s, but there was just something missing. It was right at the tip of his fingers, but he just hadn't yet grasped it. The megastar was almost the best who never was. From being underutilized and overlooked by bookers and promoters, it wasn't until a series of crucial events laid the groundwork for Stone Cold Steve Austin to be born and go on to change the wrestling industry forever. Austin was born in, ironically, Austin, Texas. That's not why he took the name. He would move to the small, rural southeast Texas town of Edna at a young age, where his dad set up an insurance company. Edna being just 100 miles outside of Houston, Steve would watch Paul Bosch's Houston Wrestling as well as Mid-South Wrestling on television as a kid. A wrestling fan from his early days, Steve was also an accomplished athlete and would go on to play football at North Texas University. The state school was located in Denton, just a half-hour drive up the road from Dallas, home to Fritz von Erich's world-class championship wrestling. Austin would go down to the famous Dallas Sportatorium with his teammates, drinking beer and watching the matches. This grew an insatiable desire within him to become a star in the wrestling business one day. Steve Austin, then Steve Williams, shifted his focus from football to wrestling. After training, he would wrestle undercard matches in Dallas and stink the joint out, in his own words, for a few months. After Jerry Jarrett purchased the Dallas territory, Steve was sent to Nashville to work for Jarrett's USWA. Dutch Mantell was booking the USWA at the time and told Steve that he would no longer be able to go by his birth name, Steve Williams, as the late Oklahoman Dr. Death Steve Williams was already using it. After Steve failed to come up with another name in the few minutes Dutch had given him to consider it, Dutch told him that night he would be Steve Austin. Steve didn't like the name because of its allusion to the $6 Million Man TV show. Dutch Mantell told him he was more like the $6 Man, the head to the ring. While the tough love rubbed Steve the wrong way at first, Dutch gave him invaluable advice as well as the nickname Stunning Steve Austin to match his flowing blonde locks. He'd return to Dallas under the moniker as a heel in main event against top star Chris Adams. The run in Dallas as Stunning Steve gained him Rookie of the Year honors and the exposure he needed to sign with World Championship Wrestling. Stunning Steve would win the WCW TV title from Bobby Eaton in 1991. WCW booker Dusty Rhodes had told Austin he was going to have a run with the U.S. title with Harley Race as his manager. Austin was elated by the news. However, at the next TV taping, he was instead put in a tag team called the Hollywood Blondes with Brian Pillman. They would go on to win the tag team championship, and just as it seemed they were really clicking with the audience, they were split up. Needless to say, Austin was unhappy with the move. Then at Starrcade 1993 in Charlotte, North Carolina, accompanied by his manager, Colonel Robert Parker, Austin would capture the U.S. title by winning back-to-back falls against Dustin Rhodes in a 2 out of 3 falls championship match. Well, it appeared that WCW had a budding star on their hands. The top brass saw things differently. Austin had suffered a tricep injury in Japan, and due to the fact that he was unable to work, he was fired via FedEx by Eric Bischoff. Austin's last appearance for WCW was against Macho Man Randy Savage. Austin's longtime friend Jim Ross said that while Austin was talented, certain others in WCW viewed him as difficult to work with. With a massive payroll of legends being signed by the promotion, and the influx of egos and talent with creative control, there simply wasn't enough air in the room for Austin to have the time and space needed to show who he really was, and just what he was capable of in WCW at the time. Austin had been looking for the missing piece for his character that would elevate him to the top echelon of the business. Receiving the cold, corporate FedEx termination letter set him off. He had a chip on his shoulder after what he felt was mistreatment at nearly every stop he'd had in his career thus far, and he was determined to show the world what they'd been missing. Steve Austin received a call in 1995 that would allow him to deliver his new message and persona to the world. Paul Heyman called Steve to let him know he was interested in bringing him in to Extreme Championship Wrestling. Austin told him he was still hurt and there was no way he could wrestle at the time. Heyman was unfazed. He simply wanted Steve to come in and cut shoot promos to capitalize on Austin's frustrations and unheralded mic skills. The promo segments included shoot-style commentary from Steve on Hulk Hogan, WCW, and even segments where he satirized Eric Bischoff in a Monday Night NyQuil vignette. Austin said of his inspiration for the ECW promo segments: "Being fired because of that injury, being prodded and being told you are not marketable, and you are not going to be successful, I really got a damn attitude. I never played like I was hurt. When I was hurt, I was hurt. That's kind of been my attitude my whole life. But I just had to get that chip on my shoulder in this business to really succeed. To get kicked down and effed over enough times that I said, I'm gonna do this my way, and if you get in my way, I'm gonna run your ass over." The switch had now been flipped, but ECW was still a small regional territory at the time, and while Austin appreciated the paychecks for cutting promos while on the shelf, an opportunity from WWE with more money and more exposure lured him to New York, as the World Wrestling Federation was commonly referred to at the time. Vince McMahon had an idea for a character called the Ringmaster, a calculated technician and ring general. He was holding on to this gimmick for a solid worker. That's exactly how he viewed Austin. McMahon, who was notoriously unaware of the work his hires had done in other companies, believed Austin didn't have the microphone skills to deliver his own promos, so he would be given this Ringmaster gimmick and have the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase as his mouthpiece to advocate and enlighten the masses of Austin's skills on his behalf. The Ringmaster debuted in WWE on January 8, 1996 during a segment with Brother Love on Monday Night Raw. DiBiase claimed he had found someone worthy of his title after searching far and wide. The Ringmaster was crowned the new $1 Million Champion. The Ringmaster would cut a promo declaring his participation in the upcoming Royal Rumble, as well as his plans to win the WWE title at WrestleMania, even though he claimed the title was worth nothing compared to the $1 Million Championship. The Ringmaster would use DiBiase's $1 Million Dream Sleeper Hold as his finishing maneuver, and the next week he would defeat Matt Hardy, who was working as an enhancement talent for the promotion at the time. The Ringmaster entered the '96 Royal Rumble at number 24, lasting 11 minutes before being eliminated by Fatu. During his run as the Ringmaster, Austin had let it be known to WWE management how turned off he was by the character he was portraying, and they asked him if he had any other ideas for which direction he wanted to go in. While hanging out at home with his wife, a documentary on Richard Kuklinski was airing. Kuklinski was a ruthless mob hitman. He stood over 6'5" and killed and dismantled his victims' bodies in unimaginable ways. He was eventually portrayed by actor Michael Shannon in the film Iceman. However, the film failed to capture the true brutality of the man because it would have been too graphic for an R rating. A light bulb went off in Austin's head while hearing about this sociopathic mass murderer. He wanted to adopt a cold-blooded killer's demeanor for his character, but was unsure of the name to capture that sentiment. Austin told WWE his idea, and they had the Creative Services Division take Austin's concept and return back with names such as Fang McFrost, Ice Dagger, and Chili McFreeze. Steve couldn't believe there were people on the WWE payroll coming up with such nonsensical creative ideas. He knew he would have to take matters into his own hands. Austin's wife at the time, Jeannie, was British, and as they sat in their home, she said to Steve, "You better drink your tea before it turns stone cold." "Ah, that's your name, Stone Cold." After just 2 months as the Ringmaster, the character name changing to Stone Cold Steve Austin would officially debut on the March 11, 1996 episode of Monday Night Raw in a match against Savio Vega, a highly physical back-and-forth bout that complemented both wrestlers' hard-hitting style and ended in a double countout. Austin and Vega would continue to feud throughout the spring, including a match for Stone Cold's first appearance at WrestleMania. On March 31, 1996, WrestleMania 12 aired live on pay-per-view from the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California. The main event of Mania that year featured the 60-minute Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Hart and Michaels would be Austin's opponents at the next 2 WrestleManias, respectively. WrestleMania 13 in an I Quit match versus Bret Hart that became an all-time classic, and for the WWE title against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14 from Boston. But on this night, the star that was Steve Austin was just beginning to shine. Austin came to the ring with his brooding entrance music, the shattering glass having not yet been adopted. With the $1 Million Championship draped over his shoulder, walking deliberately down the aisle as he was flanked by Ted DiBiase. The match was preceded by the Backlot Brawl between Goldust and Rowdy Roddy Piper. The wild backlot segment ended in a car chase away from the arena. The footage of O.J. Simpson driving away from police before being arrested on suspicion of killing his ex-wife and her boyfriend was shown during the match, pretending it was Piper chasing after Goldust on the Los Angeles interstate. Roddy Piper called into the arena and spoke with commentators Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler about the chase while Savio and Austin battled in the ring. It can be said that the continuation of the previous match's angle into Austin's match detracted from its overall presentation. In spite of this, Austin and Vega delivered another solid performance, with Austin using the $1 Million Championship belt against Savio while the ref was knocked out. DiBiase humorously revived referee Tim White by dumping a fan's Coca-Cola onto his face. White would see Vega passed out in Austin's $1 Million Dream and call for the bell, giving Austin the controversial victory in his WrestleMania debut. On April 22nd, Vega was on the verge of capturing the Intercontinental Championship in a match against Goldust on Raw when Austin interfered and struck Savio with the $1 Million title, costing him the match. The next week, on the April 29th edition of Monday Night Raw, Savio was on commentary for Austin's matchup against Bob Holly. After Austin got the win with his $1 Million Dream, Savio grabbed a microphone and called for a Caribbean strap match against Austin at the following month's In Your House, Beware of Dog pay-per-view, then slid in the ring and whipped Austin across the back with the strap as the show went to commercial. The Texan and the Puerto Rican loved working together. Jim Ross, who was booking the house show cards at the time, said they often requested to have matches on those shows against one another, and considered it like a night off because their chemistry was so strong. Heading into the pay-per-view that month, an event that reshaped the industry would take place. On the May 19, 1996 house show from Madison Square Garden, members of the backstage group of friends known as the Clique would participate in what was to become known as the Curtain Call. After the main event of the card, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, and Diesel would stand together in the ring, raising each other's arms high in a break of kayfabe, wrestling's illusory bubble of reality that was to be upheld to members of the audience at all times. Stunned fans cheered their approval, some surprised by the actions that went against the storyline, and others who were smart to the business and had heard in the newsletters that there was talk of Razor Ramon and Diesel jumping ship to WCW. Razor Ramon and Diesel would head down to Ted Turner's Atlanta-based promotion after the allure of fewer appearance dates and a fully guaranteed salary that came with a massive pay raise went unmatched by Vince McMahon. McMahon felt he could afford to match the salaries offered, but it would greatly upset the paradigm and force him to begin signing all top talents to these contracts that were highly favorable to wrestlers. Razor and Diesel would appear on WCW Nitro using their real names Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in an invasion type of angle, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality that would become the hottest act in the business, the NWO. The Curtain Call was an affront to management and other wrestlers on the roster, not merely for the fact that they went off script, but also that this put even more attention on Hall and Nash as they headed for the exit. This would create openings higher up the card for young, hungry talent looking to increase their role. Austin fit the bill perfectly. On May 26th, In Your House 8, Beware of Dog got underway from the Civic Center in Florence, South Carolina. The Caribbean strap match that had been built up by the months-long feud between Savio Vega and Stone Cold Steve Austin was finally set to commence. However, just as the match was kicking off, a massive thunderstorm caused power to be lost in the building and the WWE satellite trucks, cutting off the pay-per-view feed. They wrestled the match in near darkness in the arena, and the power and satellite feed would not be restored until just before the main event took place. On account of this outage, WWE held the Tuesday night encore edition of the card live, moving production down the road to North Charleston, South Carolina. Austin and Vega would have to endure another brutal strap match just 48 hours later. This time they'd be able to do so under the arena lights and in front of a pay-per-view audience. The previous night on Raw, Ted DiBiase had announced a new stipulation for the Tuesday night rematch. If Vega won, DiBiase would leave the WWE. The new stipulation had been added because Ted DiBiase had given his notice that he had accepted a contract with rival promotion WCW. The rules for the strap match were as follows. Both wrestlers were joined at the wrist by a 10-foot leather strap. Pinfalls and submissions did not count. The only way to win was by touching all four corners of the ring in succession. For over 20 minutes, Austin and Vega went back and forth, taking hard bumps outside the ring, laying into one another with a leather strap, whipping it across each other's flesh, and putting on the show for the fans they were robbed of 2 nights earlier. As Austin dragged Savio around the ring touching the first 3 turnbuckles, Savio was touching the turnbuckles as they went, unbeknownst to Austin. As Austin approached the final turnbuckle, he jerked Vega into the 4th corner with the strap, causing Vega to hit the turnbuckle and win the match. After the victory, Vega called for his music to be stopped and had them play "Na Na Na Na, Hey Hey Hey, Goodbye" over the PA system. Bruce Pritchard stated that McMahon loved the "Na Na Na" song and would try to have it played at events whenever it was pertinent to the story. In just a few months in the Federation, Austin now had the name he wanted, a WrestleMania victory, and was finally free of DiBiase as his manager. And while he respected DiBiase, he felt it was limiting his ability to get over by having someone do his talking for him. Austin was on the verge of a breakthrough. The cards were beginning to fall into place. He just needed that signature moment to establish just exactly who the tough Texan Stone Cold Steve Austin really was. He would get that opportunity at the King of the Ring tournament. June 3rd on Raw, Austin won his King of the Ring opening round match by defeating Bob Holly. Later in the show, Jake the Snake Roberts would defeat Hunter Hearst Helmsley in his first round matchup of the 16-man tournament as well. It's long been rumored that Hunter Hearst Helmsley had originally been penciled in to win the King of the Ring. However, his involvement in the curtain call incident led to him being punished by suffering a series of consecutive defeats. Hall and Nash couldn't be punished because they were now in WCW, and Shawn Michaels was too important to the company to receive this treatment, so the axe fell on Helmsley, once again twisting the hand of fate into Austin's favor. On June 17th, Austin would pick up a quarterfinal victory over his rival Savio Vega to advance to the semifinals. Austin delivered a stunner to finish the match, causing Vince McMahon to shout in surprise, "What a maneuver!" Live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin's Mecca Arena, WWE held its 4th annual King of the Ring pay-per-view event in front of a crowd of 8,700 spectators. The card would play host to the semifinals and finals of the tournament. Stone Cold would take on Wildman Mark Merrow in his semifinal bout in the opening match on the pay-per-view. Merrow's entrance received a loud pop, but the cheers were essentially all directed towards Sable as she strutted alongside him to the ring. Austin would pick up the victory after what was now being called on commentary as the Stone Cold Stunner near the 17-minute mark of the contest. While Austin was moving on to the finals of the tournament, he didn't come away from the match unscathed. Merrow had inadvertently kicked Austin in the mouth during the match, busting his lip open. As Austin walked away from ringside, a significant wound can be seen in a close-up on his upper lip, and blood was dripping down from his chin. Austin would be taken to a medical facility and be given several stitches before returning to the arena to face off with Jake the Snake Roberts in the finals. Roberts had advanced via disqualification in his semifinal bout against Vader. Jake the Snake entered the last round, favoring his ribs greatly after his match with Vader, and Austin brutally attacked them to begin the match. Gorilla Monsoon, the on-screen authority figure and real-life former part owner of WWE with Vince McMahon Sr., came to the ring to check on the health of Roberts as Austin's relentless assault continued. Roberts pleaded with Monsoon to be allowed to continue the match and started a brief comeback before Austin cut him off, landed some shots, picked up Roberts, and hit a stunner for the pinfall victory. What happened next would launch Stone Cold Steve Austin into greater heights than ever before and cement his rise to the anti-hero. Austin took to the podium, complete with a massive throne, as Michael P.S. Hayes held the microphone to interview the newly crowned King of the Ring. Austin cut a promo that night that would change the entire trajectory of not only his life, but the wrestling business as a whole. He stood upon the stage and spoke through the 15 stitches that now resided in his upper lip. "The first thing that I want is to get that piece of crap out of my ring. Don't just get him out of the ring, get him out of the WWE, because I've proven without a shadow of a doubt that you ain't got what it takes to cut it anymore. You sit there and you thump your Bible and you talk about your John 3:16. Well, Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass." Many felt at the time that recovering addict Jake Roberts was merely using religion as a cover to change the opinions about working with him after his past behavior. Austin even referenced Roberts needing to buy a cheap bottle of Thunderbird to get back some of the courage he used to have in his post-match interview. Austin was a heel, but he was not a traditional cowardly bad guy. His blue-collar tough, take no prisoners, don't trust anyone attitude was endearing him to more and more of the fans. And just as fast as Austin could deliver the promo, WWE Shop was printing Austin 316 t-shirts. After the Austin 316 shirts took off, Jim Ross said Austin once received a single royalty check from WWE that was worth over $1 million. JR told Steve, "Aren't you glad we had that talk about you turning babyface?" At the October pay-per-view, Buried Alive, Austin would debut his Shattering Glass theme song. The iconic song was written by WWE composer Jim Johnston and based off of Rage Against the Machine's hit Bulls on Parade at the request of Steve Austin. While it may be hard to pinpoint the exact moment it happened, 1996 was the year Stone Cold Steve Austin was officially born. A series of fateful events led to the ascent of the man who would soon take the wrestling business deep into the mainstream, resurrect WWE's struggling business, and carve himself onto the Mount Rushmore of all-time greats. Stone Cold Steve Austin had arrived, and he was just getting started.